Morning.
How are you?
Okay. I take 40 milligrams of Ritalin long-acting in the morning. I then take 20 milligrams of Ritalin slow-release in the afternoon.
17-year-old Jalisha Newell has been on Ritalin for a decade. She's one of tens of thousands of Australian children now on ADHD medication.
I feel confident in talking about ADHD because it's a part of me, it's who I am. When I'm off the medication, I get very irritable and I feel very anxious.
Does it concern you that you've been on the medication since you were 8?
I have not had any side effects whatsoever.
If Jalisha is a success story, recent developments in Australia and the US have only added to concerns about the rapidly increasing use of these powerful medications.
60,000 Australian children are on prescription amphetamines, and I think we need to be enormously concerned when the evidence that's emerging is that they do no long-term good, simply harm.
Former schoolteacher Martin Whiteley is on a crusade to slash the numbers of children taking ADHD medication. The way he sees it, the shower of pills is now a deluge.
I'm enormously worried that we're using speed, i.e. amphetamines, to ask children to be compliant. That is, we're asking them to speed up and sit still.
This is what the fuss is all about. As a doctor, I've repeatedly seen how these ADHD medications improve the focus in children and young people and help them cope with inattention, disruption, impulsivity and perhaps hyperactivity so that their parents and their teachers can reach out and teach them successfully. On the other hand, when ADHD medications are combined with other problems, these powerful psychoactive drugs mix with the already chaotic brain soup and create behavioural nightmares. As you'll see tonight, the management of ADHD is both complex and controversial.
In 2001, Martin Whiteley swapped the classroom for the bear pit. He's now a Labor Party MP in Western Australia.
I'm now going to go into my favourite topic, which of course we all know. Yes, it is. It's ADHD.
But it was his former job that first sparked his interest.
I was concerned when I was a teacher about the number of boys that were in my class that were very heavily medicated, and I became concerned that their behaviour wasn't typical of 14, 15-year-old boys. They were unusually compliant and unusually quiet.
He's been campaigning for the best part of a decade against Ritalin and its cousins.
Because amphetamines will immediately alter behaviour, a lot of parents are actually fooled into thinking, oh yes, the doctor was right, little Johnny did have ADHD and this pill has treated his condition. But what they're actually seeing is the effects that amphetamines have on virtually anybody.
And in Western Australia, his campaign has seen a dramatic decline in the use of ADHD drugs on children.
A decade ago, Perth was considered to be the ADHD capital of Australia. In that year, the official figures showed that 18,000 children were prescribed stimulant medication for ADHD. The recent figures show that that number is now down below 6,000.
I have no doubt that medication caused a lot of Brandon's problems. When he was taken off the medication, they went away.
Brandon is one of those 12,000 kids no longer on medication. According to his mum, Catherine, as a little boy, he was a hyperactive handful. At age 9, doctors put him on dexamphetamine to control his excessive behaviour.
At first, it was okay, but then the behaviours started to get a lot worse.
Ending up on multiple medications for ADHD and other mental health problems, Brandon suffered night terrors and much worse.
He used to smash his head into brick walls. He would have no control whatsoever. He was very, very violent.
Calm down!
He would have these psychotic episodes and he was totally uncontrollable and he would smash things, and so he didn't get hurt, I would hold him, which would result in me getting punched up quite a lot.
What happened when the police got involved?
I'm not sure what happened, but I ended up breaking a lot of stuff in the house, like windows and desks and TVs and stuff, and yeah.
Like he was robbed of his childhood.
Brandon is one of the more extreme cases. But for doctors, there's often no requirement to report the types of serious side effects he suffered to authorities. One medication, an antidepressant Strattera, comes with a side effect warning that it can create suicidal thoughts.
Now, we're really only seeing the tip of the iceberg because these are voluntary reports, and only a tiny fraction of these reports get actually made to the Therapeutic Goods Administration. So we simply don't know how many children have wanted to kill themselves as a result of taking Strattera.
There have been adverse events, as you've correctly pointed out, as Mr. Whiteley's pointed out, and because of the nature of adverse events, they're often quite rare and they won't be picked up in controlled trials. They'll only be picked up by long-term experience with the drug.
Respected psychiatrist Professor Philip Hazel is on the other side of the ADHD debate. He says, properly used, the benefits of drug treatment far outweigh the risks.
Well, the point I'd make is the treatment for ADHD, which includes drug treatment, can make an important difference to young people's lives. And it's never drug treatment in isolation. It's always, at the very least, concern and advice and monitoring, and sometimes it involves more intensive treatment.
But for Catherine and Brandon, the treatment they eventually chose was a specialist program that saw him come off his cocktail of drugs, including dexamphetamine.
The tremors went away. He gained weight. He didn't have his night terrors every night. The psychotic episodes stopped.
So, what caused the 12,000 West Australian kids to stop taking ADHD medication? For a start, Western Australia tightened its rules for prescribing the drugs, and it became obvious that some specialist doctors were handing out the pills far too freely.
We had the highest prescribing rates in the world, and it was basically because we had a handful, maybe two handfuls of primarily paediatricians who were very inclined to diagnose and prescribe to children.
While few doctors publicly agree with his campaign, he does have qualified support from one of the country's most respected child health experts.
And the Australian of the Year for 2003 is Professor Fiona Stanley.
Professor Fiona Stanley says there's no doubt for the right kids, drugs like Ritalin are the right treatment.
Oh, absolutely, and there's very good, I think there is good evidence for that in the short term.
But her concern is the unknown effect of sustained use on developing brains and bodies, and the lack of real research.
We don't know how long you be on it. Some of the parents are very worried because of the depression. They're worried about some of the social and emotional aspects. Is that the condition? Is it the drugs? Is it the fact that they're often ostracised at school? What is it? And you will answer that when you've got enough numbers with rigorous science to actually ask those questions properly.
This is the videotape deposition of Joseph Beiderman, MD.
Dr. Joseph Beiderman is a scientist dubbed the father of ADHD medication. For decades, the Harvard professor and child psychiatrist has advocated the use of drugs on children diagnosed with ADHD. Worldwide, his work is cited as justification for prescribing these powerful medications to the young.
What rank are you?
For professor.
What's after that?
God.
Did you say God?
Yeah.
Here at Harvard University, Dr. Biederman is a full professor, very prestigious. A world expert on ADHD, his work has been widely accepted internationally, including in Australia.
So in 2005, you were #1 in terms of total citations to your papers on ADHD over the course of the past decade. Is that right?
That's correct.
He's incredibly significant. It's impossible, I think, to overstate how significant Dr. Biederman has been in shaping how doctors view ADHD.
Last year in the US, lawyer Fletcher Trammell acted for families suing over the inappropriate use of psychoactive drugs on their children. Summoned to give evidence was Dr. Joseph Beiderman. What followed were bombshell revelations, casting doubt about the reliability of his pro-medication research. What's Dr. Biederman's relationship like with pharmaceutical companies?
Dr. Biederman's a paid spokesman. He's a pitchman, the same as the people you see on the box of Wheaties.
Does the relationship always involve them giving you money?
Most of the time.
Biederman pocketed $2 million in fees from major pharmaceutical companies bankrolling his research.
I think Dr. Biederman's papers are promotional literature, papers that were developed to sell a product. People who rely on those papers for genuine scientific content, I think, are misguided.
Why is that of concern here in Australia?
Well, I think it indicates that there's a sort of cash for comment environment with Biederman. I mean, and it is of great concern that he didn't disclose the funding.
Martin Whiteley says so long as Biederman's research remains tainted, Australia has to reconsider its guidelines. He wants an immediate move away from drugs to other treatments.
What do you say that the Commonwealth Government needs to do?
Things that will actually really deal with their underlying conditions. Things like speech therapy, things like occupational therapy, and things like family counselling, things that will actually be of use to children and families.
It's really sad. He had to wait till he was a teenager before he became, you know, a person. I would never, never, never go down the road of medication. Not ever. That should be their decision when they're older to make it. That's what they want. Little brains shouldn't be messed around with dangerous chemicals.
But those concerns are a world away from Jaleisha Newell and her mum Eve. Jaleisha sees herself not as a victim, but a winner.
I'm a regular teenage girl who plays sport, who goes to school, who enjoys everything, and I just love being me.
So when you're on the medication, you're more settled?
Absolutely. I can prioritise. I get so much more done in a period of time, and I just feel better about myself overall, really.
Are you happy?
I am very, very happy.